Thanks for picking my poster on modeling sensorimotor circuits with machine learning, hypotheses, inductive biases, latent noise, and curricula. And I know this is a long title, but believe me, there's a German word that summarizes it, actually. I also want to thank all the co-authors in this work, especially students in my lab, Alessandro, Axel, and Alberto, and some of the collaborators that are listed below. So one of the fundamental questions that we're interested in my lab is understanding how musculoskeletal control works. And this is a really hard problem because, let's say in a human, there are order of 600 muscles. They're highly redundant, how you can do control. They're multi-articular. And then also the way you actually sense your body is not, it's not that they're specialized sensors that give you high-level information, but in fact it's highly distributed through a muscle spindles. And in fact, in my very short talk, I want to talk about two talks. And the first one is on what normative computational goals best explain proprioceptive coding, and that's the part that we'll use to talk about hypotheses. And in the second part, I will talk about how can we better learn to control such high-dimensional musculoskeletal systems. So for the first part, I think everyone here knows what proprioception is. It's the sense that tells you where your body is in space, especially if you're not looking. And the interesting thing about the sense is that there are a number of receptors that are distributed in our body and that tell us where our body is in space. But the most important one are actually muscle spindles, and they sense the length and velocity and force of your different muscles that are distributed in the body. And the brain needs to kind of make sense of that incoming information. And so the question that we were asking is, what is the integrative logic of proprioception? And to show you how difficult it is, here would be the activity of 39 muscles in a musculoskeletal system, or simulated in the model of a human. Sorry, is that not loud enough? For a human. And what the brain would actually need to figure out from this kind of rather complex input, it would need to figure out what is the trajectory of my limbs. Can anyone tell me from this input what the limb is doing? I think for your brain it's of course very trivial to do this, but what is actually happening is this arm would be writing an A. Okay? And just as Dagmar was alluding to yesterday, our approach, so what we want to do is we want to reverse engineer the proprioceptive system, and our approach is actually that we want to take advantage, or we kind of realize that of course the brain is optimized to take advantage of the body. And so our approach is the following. We first simulate muscle spindle statistics at scale for naturalistic human movement, actually monkey movement here. We then take putative models of the proprioceptive system, and then we optimize these putative models on many different hypotheses that people have put forward with regard to what the proprioceptive system is actually doing. So notice, so far, the only time the monkey came in here is through the biomechanics model, but what we actually then have is we have a model, we have an experiment where a monkey does a center outreach task, and where our collaborator Lee Miller records in proprioceptive areas. And we actually want to predict this data without training on it, okay? So we make these hypothetical models, and what we then do is we freeze our neural network models, we estimate it with deep lab cut the 3D kinematics, we infer the state of the muscles, we feed it in our model, and then from there we try to predict the neural data. And it turns out that this works really well. So what you see here is trial by trial predictions of the neural data in QNet nucleus. The explained variance is pretty high. And if you look at, for example, these two trials here, the monkey is actually moving in exactly the same direction, and the model can really capture the dynamics of this single unit. And there are many, many results in the paper, and you wonder, what does that have to do with cognition? Well, because I'm in Rome, I give you my interpretation of the data in Latin, and it's quaedam sundum intellectu non prius in sensu. Okay? And the second thing that I wanted to talk about, how can we better learn control policies in high-dimensional spaces? And here the things that we really want to deal with is, for example, we want to control 39 degrees of freedom to rotate this cube into a particular orientation after training. So this is obviously all policy gradient methods. And what we have shown in a bunch of papers is that inductive biases, curriculum learning, and latent noise are really good for boosting your performance on these tasks. And for example, in the last 2 years, we actually won the challenge at NeurIPS to control arms to do particular things. And so I want to thank my lab, and especially Alessandro, Axel, and also Alberto Chiappa, who did most of the work.